Hangout is live, so that means we're on the air right now. Hi guys, I'm Tracy, Tracer Ammo, and this is episode 1 of TracerammoTV. So I am still pretty unsure of how I'm going to format these episodes from here on out. I'd like to start it out with, a cool fact of the day or something like that, just a kind of a rhythm, an introduction thing, maybe what I've been working on, that sort of shit. And then music, maybe the music that's been inspiring me lately. And then I want to get into the main topic and then discuss comments and stuff as they come up. I can see right now in my feed that I'm glitching a little bit. That should be taken care of. Today we're getting a new, more powerful router, and so I should be able to pick up signal a little bit better. And so the glitchiness shouldn't be as much of an issue in upcoming episodes. So first thing I want to talk about is music. That's the one thing I know I'm going to start doing in these introductions is telling you guys about the kind of music that's been inspiring me lately. I can tell it's frozen again, so when it freezes on my end, I'm going to pause and let it kind of catch up. But there's a new mix out by C. Markle, and it's called Drum Embrace. You can get it on SoundCloud.com, and I will include a link to it either in the video description on YouTube or on my Tracer Ammo page on Facebook. So that's what I'm going to suggest. If I get to a point with this whole Google Hangout, thing where I can put audio on here and it sounds good, then I will actually feature some of that music in the episode that I am talking about it. So to start things out, my co-host wants that. Buddy. To start things out, that's what I would like to do is a little bit of music, and that's just been what's been inspiring me lately. It's really kind of chill. Everything's been real hot. Come on, buddy. This is my co-host, Pete. Hi. Yeah, I like camera folks. Well, he's a pretty cool little buddy. He's my favorite little buddy. So it's been really hot where I live. Extremely hot. And so the music being chill, being kind of down tempo is really satisfying to me because I can kind of lazily flow to it. And it's not so upbeat that my instinct is to spin quickly, because some music that makes you want to spin in accord to it, and this is a nice chill song, nice chill actually mix. It's like over an hour long. It's great. So that's that. I don't really have format down as well as I'd like, so if that was a bit rambly, sorry. I don't even have a link to it, but SoundCloud.com, C. Markle, Drum Embrace. Look that up. All right, so just updates, what I've been doing lately. I guess what the cool thing that's happened recently was my homie Samwise just came through town, and he is a great spinner, a great staff spinner, a great toy spinner, and both of us have been kind of geeking out on quad point lately. We've been communicating through the internet and that sort of thing, and man, he showed me some stuff that was really crazy. And it kind of correlates with what we're going to be talking about today with the atomic stuff, because we're both into spinning atomic patterns with our one hand. Superman's an atomic pattern, Fantastic Four's an atomic pattern. And really, when you get down to it, depending on how you define what an atom is, anything with one hand can kind of be considered an atomic pattern. And so we were geeking out on that. And because of that little sesh, I've got some more cool 4-point stuff coming up soon that I want to share with you. It's pretty weird. All right, but now that I have hinted towards the atomic thing and mentioned it, I don't know, the quality's so bad that I don't think you can see the cat hair pouring out everywhere, but this little buddy is shedding a lot. Oh, you cute little baby. Sorry, I'm being a cat person. Okay, so what I'd like to talk to you guys about to get into the nitty gritty of the episode will be atomic spinning. And there's to start this conversation out, I'd like to talk about 3D spinning in general. I think 3D spinning is a good umbrella word, a word that takes and kind of covers a lot of stuff. In a weird way, I consider diagonal spinning in a diagonal plane 3D spinning, because you're taking up space in left and right, because you're top of your diagonal line, the bottom of your diagonal line, and then forward and back because you're circle. So in a weird way, that's a 3D spinning. In reality, all spinning is in 3D, but it's been kind of, I don't know, pigeonholed or whatever into 2D spinning. Let's see, I'm glitching again. Okay, cool, I'm back. So I think that everything's been pigeonholed into 2D spinning because it's what was considered proper, and the geometry is easy to display in a 2D spin, you know. And I have these cool little things that I made. Out of wire, and what they are is just, see if you can see that. That's the pattern an anti-spin would make. Well, I guess an anti-spin versus extension 4 pedal. You know, if I turn it sideways, you can see, depending on where you are in the audience, the shape will change its appearance a little bit. You know what I mean? Here's a triquetra, upside down triquetra. As you start to turn it, it gets a little more skewed, a little more, instead of being round, it's more of an oval now, with like a smash target. So you can see that with the 2D spinning, the point I'm trying to make is the 2D spinning has one angle of presentation that is aesthetically pleasing. Now, this is a model I made out of wire of a 2-beat weave. And it's cool because you can see this 2-beat weave in space. It isn't a perfect line. You're not making this. This is a reel, right? Just a circle. This is the path, the head of the poi traces. But when you're doing a 2-beat weave, your hand is in the center of this V. You can see that. That's a V. Your hand would be in the center. So the 2-beat weave is actually a reel on this side. And then this is the point where it switches around the center of rotation. This is the bend point. I don't know what you would call that, the cross point. And then it moves to this other reel here. You just repeat that pattern, you end up with this shape. So even if you're spinning in 2D, this is a 3D shape. And what's cool about that is if we take and make that shape atomic by putting the planes perpendicular to each other, you can get this pattern. This pattern is a wavy weave. On my Facebook page, one of my pictures is a really cool image my buddy Ryan caught of me doing this pattern at about that angle, and it looks pretty cool. But if you look at it from the top, you can see what it is I'm stretching out a 2-beat here and stretching out a 2-beat here, and they're perpendicular to each other around the center pole of the shape here. Now, there he goes. So that's a really cool pattern, and you know what that was? Is a wavy weave. Wavy weave is an atomic shape. It's an atomic crosser, and your pole is vertical, and you're just moving back and forth. So now let's, since I've been ranting about the angles and the shapes and how all spinning is 2D, I mean all 2D spinning is 3D, blah, 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 blah. I'll get into some actual atomic stuff. The way that I wanted to present this idea to you guys was essentially like, if you have, let's just break it down to the smallest things, the variables that we have. We have a single poi. A single poi can do really, you know, one basic thing, and that's spin around the center of rotation. So here we have a single poi, and this is the center of rotation. So I'm spinning it, and it's creating a circle. That's what's happening, right? And now I've taken these hoops, and like the reason I'm just being arbitrary is because it could be anywhere, you know what I mean? Like we haven't really defined much. All we have is a poi orbiting. We have this, like, try to think of the limiting factors, because with poi, there's a lot more potential than there are limiting factors. So the limiting factors would be like how many poi we have, how long the chain is, how our body is interacting with the poi, and how the two poi are interacting with each other, and how gravity affects the poi. You know, there's other factors as well, but they are not nearly as prevalent as those other ones that I just named. So let's take these variables and kind of examine them. It's difficult to say which direction the poi is going, you know, if it was in a vacuum. Right now we can say it's like relative to you in the screen that I'm looking at, it looks like it's going clockwise, okay? Now, that's because that's our point of view from it. Looking at it from this side, from your guys' point of view, it looks like it's rotating clockwise. Looking at it from my point of view, it looks like it's rotating counterclockwise. Because I'm on the other side of it than you. You know what I mean? So which way is it going really? That's a question, right? So that brings up a concept of relativity. It's spinning in a direction relative to you. So in order to make that more concrete, make it so we can select and label what's going on, I've come up with this idea. I mean, I say I come up with, it's really just an idea that I noticed. But, and I'm going to demonstrate it with this hoop. Because if we imagine that this hoop is the orbit of the poi head, we can break it into two halves, right? Relative to gravity. Let's use that as our relative point. This red side is going to be down. Gravity will be affecting it here. And then on this other side, the blue side, we'll have to give a little push with our hand and it'll swing up against gravity to this top point, and then gravity will take over again. So we can actually polarize this. We could say, let's say negative because it's moving down towards the ground. Let's say positive because it's moving up against gravity. So now we have a positive and a negative side. That's pretty cool. That gives us a lot to work with in the ability to conceptualize what we're talking about, because it's a little more self-contained, I would say, than timing a direction relative to a person or to an audience, you know, because now you're containing it to within its own little system. And another thing that this is going to come in handy with is when we start getting into the atomic stuff, is when they're parallel, you can kind of keep each point its own, you can keep them separated. I don't know, the negative point. Oh, here it is. Okay, so now I'm going to get into talking about two poi and the way they interact with each other. We have both poi. So here's this. If both poi are spinning and they're moving towards gravity on the left-hand side, on my left-hand side, on your right-hand side, then they'll both be going in the same direction. We have this. This would be like same time. Well, this would be just same direction. This doesn't really have anything to do with timing, the whole polarity deal. So this would be same direction. If we take and we rotate one poi's orbit around its center of rotation all the way, that looks like it's glitched again. There we go. Then we're in opposite direction. You can see here, this would be like a butterfly shape, right? It could be same time, split time, it doesn't matter. These are parallel. I'll rotate this all the way around. Parallel. So this could be a buzzsaw or something, whereas this would be butterfly between your arms. Now, atomic stuff is shaped like this. And that means your hands are in the center of this shape, but the planes are perpendicular to each other. But if you look at this pretty closely, I'm going to try to rotate this shape so you can see what's going on here. This is the atomic shape, right? two perpendicular planes. Bam. What's cool about this is it's always, I'm actually going to stand up. Hopefully this is clear if I stand up. You can see that this shape has one quadrant, like this, hold it like that. You can see it's divided into quadrants, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we can define these quadrants by their characteristics of this one and this one are both negative. So this is a completely negative quadrant. This one and this one are both positive. They're the blue ones at the bottom. They're both positive. So this would be the completely positive quadrant down here on the opposite of the negative one. So we have negative, positive. And then I call this side and this side the mixed polarities, okay? Because they are mixed. You have one that's positive and one that's negative, or vice versa. So this model is great because it defines where the poi can interact. Mixed polarities are a no-go or tangle zone, and the same, negative, negative, or positive, positive, those are mesh zones. Like that's where the cog idea comes in. So I'm going to try to demonstrate that right now by showing you my right hand is spinning forward. Oh yeah, another thing that I have to talk about before I get into demonstrating with the poise is this. Okay, so this is ideal, right? This would be, the center of rotation would be right here in this line between the 2 points where they cross. Right there and right there. That is the center of rotation in a perfect system. But because we have two hands and the chains have to interact with our bodies and our arms, there's limitations there. So we're never actually going to have the center of rotation perfect. They're not ever going to be the exact same spot. One's in one hand, one's in the other. Even if they're both in the same hand, there's a distance of your hand between the two centers of rotation. So what happens, you end up with, let's see if you can see this. I'm going to do same time kind of shit, but you'll notice there's a point right there. I'm going to try to point with my fingers where it's at. That point, there's one right now. Okay, here. This is the pattern I'm spinning. Is this Crosshair Adam. There's going to be a point right in this quadrant, right near the pole of the atom, this imagined center line, right here. This is the point where the nexus will occur. Then you'll see me cross my hands and the nexus will occur here. Now, when I say nexus, what I'm talking about is the invisible point in space that the two chains pass through. That is the same point. It's kind of like the nodes of the moon in astrology, where the ecliptic and the moon, where they would pass in space. So that's like the nexus, okay? So that quadrant that I was showing you right there. This is because it's moving towards me and away from you, we'll call this bottom. To you, it would be the bottom right. So we'll call the bottom right quadrant negative polarity. Now watch what happens if I cross my hands. Boom. See how the nexus has moved into the upper left quadrant? That's the positive polarity, right? So they're both in the positive. The nexus is in the positive polarity on the upper right, and then lower left. And you can see that they're interacting just fine. I can switch the timing up, the same time right there, and they'll continue to interact just fine as long as you keep the nexus in one of the either negative, negative, or positive, positive quadrants. Now watch what happens. Instead of flipping them both over, if I just take okay, so if I'm spinning like I was spinning originally with the nexus right here, I can move the nexus into this quadrant by just moving one poi, my right poi in this particular circumstance, upward, past the center of rotation of the poi in my other hand. Also, I could take this poi and move it past the center of rotation in the other direction. One will be moving horizontally, one will be moving vertically. if I do that and I move the nexus into one of the mixed polarities, I will end up where my chains collide. Not necessarily a bad thing. But see how they're both here is the negative quadrant to you. If I just move this hand to this point here above my center of rotation of my other hand, they're not connected right now. I don't have them, my hands aren't together. If my hands were together, moving up here would be impossible, and I'll show you why. Because that happens. But there are some cool rules to this. You can take, if you enter in the upper left quadrant, for you, the upper right quadrant, and they tangle, you could do what is basically a 3D air wrap, and they will come out in the lower right quadrant, or lower left quadrant for you. Okay, that didn't work. In these Crosshair Adams, I can't. I know in theory it works. I can't demonstrate it for you right now. But if you take a Crosshair Adam, like this guy, and you rotate it, then you end up with a tilted atom. Now this tilted atom that I'm demonstrating in the screen right now, the positive here, negative here. Mixed. You can also rotate that whole system. Now I have positive here, negative here, mixed. So I'm going to use that particular atom to demonstrate what I'm talking about with the air wrap idea. So you can see how my nexus is on the outside. It's lateral. I call these particular atoms lateral polarity because the nexus is on the outside. Either the left or the right. It's not on the top or the bottom. If I try to put my nexus in this top quadrant right here, then that tangle thing will happen. But if what I was telling you earlier is true, I should be able to pop it down and it'll untangle in the lower quadrant. Well, trust me, it's true. I just have to be able to demonstrate it properly. That was ugly, but you can kind of see where I'm going. It does work. I'm having a hard time doing it right now. Sloppy. Okay, anyway, take my word for it. That's what happens. So we've kind of discussed the quadrants and the polarity, and just now touched a little bit on orientation. And so when I refer to orientation, what I'm talking about is this atomic shape, right? How is it oriented relative to your body? So like I was talking about tilted atoms, crosshair atoms, vertical versus vertical atoms, because it's perpendicular, but both planes are vertical. You can even do diagonal versus vertical atoms. And those are weird, but they work. I mean, either direction. Any way you can take this shape and orient it to your body, then you can do that atomically. And okay, so like originally in this video, I was talking about 3D spinning being a overarching kind of umbrella idea for this. An atom, I consider, has perpendicular planes, and an atomic flower. Okay, here, an atom is this. This is an atom. Any one variation of any of these things, you know, because what I'm doing is I'm keeping my hands together and I'm keeping the planes perpendicular to each other. Even though I'm rotating them through space, changing the orientation of the pole as I do it, I'm keeping the planes perpendicular to each other and I'm keeping my hands together. Those are the rules that I'm kind of covering with this video, is the rules of atomic interaction in that particular fashion. The reason that these can kind of be moved outward into atomic flowers is because, let's just imagine our arms are the poi and our body is the center of rotation. Then the rules are, you can do the same rules, you know what I mean, with your arms, you know, all that stuff. So it's like the atomic flower is just moving this concept, the atomic interactions of the poi, at just one level of magnitude to your body, and then that gives you the opportunity of like driving styles. You can change from anti-spin to in-spin or extension or whatever, and continue to use this particular theory. And in flower zone, you know, like, let's say we get to like this point right here. See how you can see that my right hand is on the bottom. With my this point, there we go. See, these mesh, these go together. This is the other polarity. These mesh, these go together. This is the other polarity. So you're moving and you're following the rules of atomic spinning, but you're just moving it out to your arms. Okay, I know this is a lot, and it's a lot of, I mean, if you're not familiar with the vocabulary that I'm using, or if you haven't played with the concepts that I'm talking about, I know a lot of this probably seems like absolute mayhem because the not clarity of the video, but it's worth taking my word for it and then going and playing with your poi, and then you'll start to see what I'm talking about, because it becomes self-evident once you start messing with it. Some of the stuff that you'll notice that gets a little bit tricky and is a little bit weird to figure out at first, so, well, it took me a minute to figure it out, was there are two atoms. How I was showing you, there's one atomic shape, just a single atomic shape. There's only one atomic shape. You can orient it to yourself differently, or you can present it to the crowd differently, so its appearance will change, or the way that it interacts with your body will change, but there's only one atomic shape, right? The reason I keep emphasizing shape is because there's two different ways to get it. So the easiest way for me to demonstrate this is by taking just a buzzsaw, and at the very bottom of the orbits, them so that they're perpendicular, and then you can bring those in together. This is one type of atom. You can bend them down, and you have vertical versus vertical variation of that type of atom. You can bend it upward, you can take it, and you can bend it sideways so that now it's a crosshair. This way, you can take it and you continue to rotate it so that you get this lateral polarity atom. But that is all one atom just presented differently. So now let's take it, the buzzsaw, and we bend it, instead of bending it from the bottom of the orbit, bend it from the top of the orbit. Bring your hands together. Similar looking, right? But it's different. This will never interact with the other atom. These two they're completely separate. And the only way you can move from one to the other is by bending or stalling or breaking. You know, I mean, they're all basically the same thing. And that's what ties back into that whole 3D being the overarching kind of deal, is because you can do breaks are 3D, but they're not atomic unless you stop in an atomic spot. You know what I mean? This would kind of be atomic, but this is just 3D. The planes are perpendicular, but my hands aren't together. So I can throw an atom in there and break around a little bit. Go into an atom for a second. Atom on that side. Oops. Atom on that side. But knowing how to do these atoms is cool, because then you can kind of use them in your breaks and take pauses and create little static systems that last for a minute. That's also why I like atomic flowers, to do those little, have an atom, and then have an atom on this side. And so it's almost fractally atom inside a big atom with another one on the other side. That's the pattern you're creating. The aesthetic of 3D stuff, I want to eventually get to that in this, but I feel like it's important for us to keep grinding out the nitty-gritty for right now. So those are the two atoms. One of them involves crossing your hands a lot. One of them doesn't. It's really difficult to come up with variables or something that's unique to each one. That makes it easy to label it. So something you'll just have to experiment with. But that's the thing that I found that defines one relative to the other the most, would be crossing your hands. So like this one is way easier to do with your hands crossed. This one is, you can't cross your hands. Oh yeah, oh no, okay. A while ago I came up with this. Didn't really stand up to all of the different orientations, so I kind of abandoned it, but it's another good way to think about your two different kinds of atoms. If you look here, the poi are spinning perpendicular to each other, but parallel to my forearm, right? And that's if you took the atom and bent it from the top. If you took the buzzsaw and bent it from the top, that's the parallel to the arms version. You take the buzzsaw and you bend it from the bottom, you can kind of see that now the poi is spinning in a plane perpendicular to my arm. So that's another way to think about the two types of atoms. Now, something kind of confusing about these is the patterns that you'll make appear to the audience very similar. And to show you what I mean, I'll show you a Wavy Weave. This is the cross arms version, or the perpendicular to the arm version. Oh my God, hopefully you can see this. Well, yeah, it looks like a split off butterfly, but and that looks almost like a split thing. If you feel it as though it's split seam, it'll be a little easier, but it's just a split seam atomic across it from the side. Or if you do it from the front, then it's just a wavy from the front. So I'll show you from the side the way it's normally presented. This is that pattern that I was talking about earlier, this cool thing. This guy. The thing on my Facebook page that I was showing you, the picture that my homies took. Shout out Ryan. But that's what this pattern is. The way you do it is take your buzzsaw, bend it from the side that's closest to you, instead of the bottom of the orbit, the side of the orbit that's closest to you. Bring your hands together. They're working like gears, and then you'll just be able to cross one over the other one, and continue working. And then just imagine they're both going in the same direction, because it can kind of, it's like one of those puzzles, not puzzles, but those images where it's two squares. Let's see if I can draw you one. It's two squares with all the corners connected, and as you stare at it, you can kind of trip your brain out and say, oh, that square's in front. Oh, I mean, that square's in front. This guy. Let's see that. Looks like, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah. I don't know if you have stared at one of those for a while, but you can see the square on the left might pop to the front, and then the square on the right might pop to the front, just the way that your eyes focus on it, where you put your attention. So that, you can't really say which one's the front, you know, because it just depends on the way you're looking at it. And that's kind of the way these atoms work. This looks like split opposite, right? And I can think of it as a split off butterfly if it's so close. But then, if I think of it from the side, it's just as close to a split thing. So it's like one of those cubes. The way that your brain is thinking about it or perceiving it kind of determines what it means to you. Okay, so when you're thinking of this, instead of thinking of it as a cross arm split off butterfly kind of deal, think of it as a really wobbly crosser, just where both are going forward, right? And that'll make this move easier. If you just keep thinking of it as a wobbly crosser, get into your crosser, and then slowly bring your hands into like more of like a, instead of straight, this is all kind of like started calling these handcuffs. Because your wrists are together. I don't know, just a crosser where your hands cross at the wrist instead of at the elbows. Okay. So then if you just get that move down, bend the planes a little bit, and you end up with the Wavy Weave. That's what this is right here. Okay. So that whole fucking tangent, that whole random long thing was to show you the difference between the Wavy Weave with the Crosshair Adam, which means I took my buzzsaw and bent it out from the point closest to me. Now I'm going to take the buzzsaw, I'm going to bend it out from the point farthest from me, and I'm going to bring my hands together without crossing. All right? And I'm just going to do a crosser now. Well, I mean, not a crosser, like, I guess it was more like switching sides with a buzzsaw. But I'm going to bend it so we're on the outside. But I wish that this was clear, because this is basically a Wavy Weave. And boy, are making the same pattern. They're going through the same path, except for the one difference is that it's interacting differently with my body. The same thing goes to like knot Coleman. A knot Coleman, this is the bend out from close to me, so my arms cross version, right? I'm going to take my hand that's on top, I'm going to turn around essentially and then use that to scoop through the negative space created by my wrist cross. Now my other hand's on top. We got a knot Coleman. Like that. Now watch this. Same thing. But instead of crossing my wrist, I'm doing the other Adam. I'm going to go, and it's kind of arbitrary, but see how the pattern looks almost like they're not. They're two different moves because I have to do different things to achieve them, but the pattern is identical. And that's what you're going to get a lot with this atomic stuff is you have to learn so many variations that all look the same. And so that's one kind of daunting and discouraging thing about it is there's so much shit to practice and drill that doesn't really make an aesthetic difference to the audience. And so like I see a lot of people learning an atomic move or something that looks cool, using a break or a stall to get into it, and then going back into regular spinning. That's awesome. That's awesome. But what I'm trying to do is understand the system so that I can put all 2D spinning aside and keep my brain in a 3D spinning mindset always, because that's what it really is. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just the way I want to approach it, and I hope it's inspiring to you. I hope you guys are kind of gleaning something from all this. So what I was just showing you, now this is actually the next part where I wanted to get into with this. Is I know I'm giving you a lot of theory and a lot of bullshit to think about and mess with and all that, and I've talked to you a lot about all these different things and the different variations and orientations of the atoms and all that, you know. So this would be the point where questions, comments would be appreciated, because anything that maybe you weren't capable of seeing in my video because my router is so shitty as of right now, then you could ask a question and I could clarify it. But hopefully my video stuff clears up soon, and that will all be, you know, easy for you guys to see. But what I'd like to do is end this with some actual moves for you guys to do and mess with, and then maybe be able to kind of get your head around some of this stuff. If it's not clear to you already, maybe these moves will help you experience them and put them in your body instead of just in your mind. So those initial moves I'll actually put a link to a video I have. It's like vertical versus vertical atomic everything. And it's basically just like a little cool framework that gives you the ability to keep your planes perpendicular to each other while spinning vertical. And it demonstrates from the cross arm version or parallel to cross arm version perpendicular to your arm, Adam, and then the parallel to your arm, hence not crossed Adam. It goes through this. So I'll throw a link somewhere, maybe in the description. I don't know. But that's kind of, it includes the knot Coleman and the wavy weave and all that stuff we were talking about just now. Those ones are great. I love, what started me out with the 3D spinning and the atomic stuff was vertical versus vertical atoms. And to be completely honest, I'm not too much of a fan of the crosshair because there's kind of dumb asymmetry, you know, like it does have some nifty presentations like during flowers. I like them during flowers. And then that, like, I love it in that case. The atomic weave, let's just talk about that for a minute. The atomic weave is, it's in the category of Crosshair Adam, the classic atomic weave. And it is pretty straightforward once you kind of understand the quadrant idea that I was kind of demonstrating, because really all you have is this, or a 3D would just be like staying below or above the other arm a little bit longer. And then with this one is the same kind of deal. And so there's so many variables, it's ridiculous. So we just start with, like, I consider this like an atomic buzzsaw because, you know, it basically is. And so you could take this, and remember I was using this example for demonstrating the quadrants. And I don't even have to move, you know, the point from one side of my hand to the other to switch to do a crossover point like that. I could just take it and move it into the new quadrant, move them both simultaneously into their new quadrants. You can make that into a 2D weave, which would be akin to this one. You know, because it's not actually across on the side of my hand. I'm not actually doing a 2D. It's all just doing reels and moving around each other. But if I wanted to take it, I could do a 2 beat there and see how I've just moved my hand so that the poise stays relatively still. So it's working in its spot. Same thing with this one, right? So I just did a 2 beat with my vertical hand and a 2 beat with my horizontal hand. Or I can do a 2 beat with both of them. Or I could do 3 beat with one and 3 beat with the other. See, there's a shit ton of variables, and that's only in one atom. You know, let's say I take and I bounce that, right? I change the polarity. Now I have a whole new series of variables available to me. And the pattern doesn't look particularly different, but the way that the shit interacts with my body is completely different. And so I have to learn as though it's a new move. And let's be honest, these don't really look that cool. So you can drill them as much as you want and get familiar with them. That's great. I encourage it because I think it's good to have knowledge of all that stuff so that if you find yourself tangled and kind of come out of the tangle of a weird thing, if you understand where you're at, then it's not an issue and you can just turn it into an atom or start it into a flower, whatever, you know, because you know where you are. So it's always good to know as much as you can about everything, you know. Now we can take and think of these. I like these ones significantly more because the symmetry. So here's a 2 beat weave. One. So 2 beat on my left, 2 beat on my right. Maybe just kind of stagger those. If we leave that way like that, it's not the other way. getting a little bit crazier with the weaves. You have to like start making these big wide patterns because the patterns have to be wider because the point has to interact with your arm. So you can't really, there's limitations there. See how I have to move my arms a lot more to get those extra beats in. And so that's another kind of variable of the atomic weave. I like those ones more because they look a little more symmetrical. And then I was talking about the stupid one, diagonal versus vertical. It's the same kind of thing. It's just getting comfortable with doing stupid shit, you know. Now, the only reason I ever use that particular atom is if I'm in box mode and I'm doing breaks, like right there. Like from this, if you're in box mode, right here. And at this bottom point, where basically at any corner, if you take one and continue the box, and you go one into that point here straight in front of you on the diagonal plane, if you stop right at that diagonal point, and the other point is in any one of these boxes, if you bring your hands together, then you'll end up here in that diagonal versus vertical atom. It's weird. It's mayhem. It makes a lot of no sense. So we've covered some atomic weaves in tilted and crosshair. I'm not even, vertical versus vertical. Check out that video that I had mentioned earlier. That's got a ton of atomic weaves in it. Atomic flowers is something for a different day because the variables, there's a lot of them. And so we come up with a lot of different things that we could do. And that will just take additional time to explain. So I'm not going to do that here. But like I was talking about with breaks and bends and stuff, I kind of demonstrated briefly how you can do breaking and go into an atom because of the breaks, and then back out into breaking, new atom there. New atom there. Now, I could take and in spin pedal there, do a break, and then go into my new atom and change the orientation of it relative to the audience and myself if I want to turn my body. Or another thing I could do is bend the one. So that's what breaks and bends are. I don't really consider to be atomic things. I consider them to be transitional things in 3D. And so that's a nomenclature debate that someone else can have. I'm just letting you know that's just the way I think of it because they are very momentary. They're made up of lots of momentary things. You can't stable a bend. A bend only happens in an instant. It's either a reel and then a bend and another reel. Or you're doing, this is a figure 8. But I've just pointed the corner of it towards me. So think of it as a bend. I think of it as a figure 8. When I think of bend, I think of that point right there. That's where the bend happens. When I move the center of rotation to change the angle of the plane that I'm spinning. So bending is awesome for getting yourself into atoms or out of them. And breaking is also awesome for that same thing. You can break yourself into atoms and out of them however you want. And I just love breaking. It's great shit. So I guess that's a good note to end on. So we've covered a lot today. I haven't gotten any comments, but this will be up. This will be on. It'll be part of the TracerammoTV archive. And so if you ever do end up watching this video and leave me comments on it, I'll still get them later. And in upcoming episodes, I will address it. I plan on doing, depending on how many questions I get and they are to each other, I might just do a couple episodes that are questions answered, you know, like FAQ or whatever, something like that. But that is all for today. I'm going to hop off the live feed and get on editing that stuff. I have video links to give you. I have some music links to give you. And that's really it for today. So thanks you guys for tuning in, checking out Tracer Ammo TV. Next time you guys watch, leave comments live. I need to test this out. I have my comment window over here now. I just haven't gotten any comments from y'all. So next time. All right. I hope you guys have a great weekend. It is First Friday this Friday. I'm tempted to go spin some fire. It is so miserably hot. I am hesitant to do it. I just want to go spin poi somewhere, not fire, because it's too hot. All right. Everybody, have a great weekend. This is Tracer Ammo signing out. Thanks for tuning in.